Welcome back. In today's video, I finally answered the call. I know a lot of you guys have been asking for more actual projects or sort of more hands-on carpentry work. So in this video, I did a little 2x2 mock-up. Nothing too crazy, nothing too intricate, but it kind of shows you the process of how to go about it. If I was to do this by myself, it'd probably only take like 10 or 15 minutes, but because I'm doing it a little bit slower, showing you guys actual step-by-step how it works. And I even had a apprentice fill-in, Wuda, my cousin, to kind of show like someone who's fresh to the industry, who doesn't have very much experience, see how they would go about, actually helping a journeyman, work on this project. So hope you guys enjoy. I appreciate you. Please like and subscribe. Let's get into it. So to get started off, in this project we're gonna do a 2x2 square, and we're gonna frame it out and put some plywood on top of it. But before we get started, we wanna make sure that we are fully equipped, whether we have all the fasteners we're gonna need, and as far as our equipment, our saws, end packs, sawzalls, whatever you're gonna need, chalk boxes, make sure they're fully equipped. So right now, check your chalk box. I see mine, it's brand new, there's no chalk. This is the time that you want to take in the beginning of the day where you are fully equipping yourself so that you are effective. So you want to check that saw right there, check that real quick. That's fully, that has all the batteries it needs, but also making sure that you have backups. So you're gonna go and check your batteries. You wanna make sure that if you have any of your equipment, it doesn't have full batteries, you wanna make sure you're putting batteries in there at this time, because again, this is the time that you're gonna use to be more effective. You wanna make sure that when you are starting, that you are utilize that time in your Connex, utilize that time in your dry shack, so that when you leave here, you're fully equipped. So this saw's full, make sure you're putting some in your bags, boom, making sure your impact is all the way full, making sure your sawzall is all the way full. You wanna make sure that you're fully equipped to go, so that if you are waiting, if there's some downtime, whether it be break or you're going to lunch, that's when you wanna restock. Okay, so the task at hand is framing up a 2x2 square. So you have a choice. You can either just towel these together like this, having one piece right here and having two sides. But what you see is, because all these pieces of 2x are already 24 inches, you have to account for the extra lumber in the length. So your choice is to either have all these tie in together like this, and then tie right here like that, and kind of have like in a swirl pattern, or you can be more efficient and just cut these two boards down. And by doing that, you have to account for the 1.5 inches right here, 1.5 inches right here. So you're gonna cut this board down and this board down by 3 inches. That's something very important. You always want to double check too. Like, even though you may have the dimensions proper already, you might have cut this one down or cut this down before to 2 feet. You want to make sure that when you are putting it all together, that the dimensions are still fitting. This is why you also want to always measure twice and cut once. Looking good, boom, check the other one. Looking good, boom. And so before you cut anything, you always want to put X right here. This X means that this piece is going to be garbage. Sometimes you'll get a lot of random numbers, maybe a longer board. You might need a 16-footer and things get confusing. Always put an X for the piece that's not going to be used anymore, always. Okay, so when we're first cutting these boards, when you first get started, you may not be comfortable cutting a board, so it's good to utilize your speed square to be a guide for you, right? So you want to do is, you want to put that saw right where that line is, right? And then once the saw is right where the line is, you want to put that square to keep you straight. Because when you first get started, you might not feel comfortable, and you might not realize what it feels like when you're cutting straight. So that speed square is going to be like your training wheels. Boom. Now I did that one. I'm gonna have my apprentice do a second one. So it's very important that you are cutting on the right side of the line. Sometimes it doesn't matter, like with this rough frame right here, it's not gonna matter as much, but when it comes to finish work, cutting on the right side of the line is gonna be crucial. So this time, it's not gonna be as important, but it's always good to practice doing the right thing every time, so that when you do have a crucial moment, like it is a finished work, a material that you don't have a lot of supply with, making sure you're cutting precision is gonna be important. So go ahead and put that square up there. Put the saw, he's gonna put the saw at the line, and then he's gonna use his speed square to line up the cut. Boom, just like that. So going back to the project, as you can see, these pieces are obviously smaller. So these are gonna be your inside, these are gonna be the 21 inches, and these are the 24. Boom. Boom. But also, so we are gonna nail these together. But also that's not the end of it. Don't just nail them together and then put the plywood on there and then frame it out. You want to make sure that they're still square. So we're going to fasten these together. But you also want to double check by checking the diagonals just to make sure they're square. Boom. And then you're going to do the same thing over here before you put the plywood on there. So we're going to nail them now, and then we're going to come back after we nail them and we're going to put the plywood on there. Okay, so before you nail this top piece in, you want to make sure that you are square. So you want to check, boom, at the 90-degree angle. You want to push it in a little bit, and that's also where it needs to land on top too. So we're going to lock this in here, boom, that's nice. That's nice. I'm going to make sure that this top piece right here is on there, and I'm going to leave this to my apprentice to nail this other portion off. I did the harder part. Usually you do this with a nail gun. It's a little more difficult to do it with the hand nailing, especially if you're not accustomed to using your hammer a lot for nailing. So I like that right there. Looks pretty good. Go ahead and nail it off right there. Your section, I'm going to hold this for him. All right. So also before you nail it, make sure that you are flush on the end.
Make sure flush.
Right here. Make sure it looks good. Flush right there. Boom. That looks good. Now lock that in. You can see my cousin works in IT, so you can see he's gonna spin a couple more times. You also, the further down you move, the more power you have on your hammer, but it's also gonna be the less amount of control. So the more you clutch up here, the more control you have, the less power you have. So you wanna make sure you kind of find that balance. I kind of like mine right on here. I don't utilize the full entire length of my hammer like I should, but I try my best. Boom. Wanna make sure it's flush right here. Get you one nail right here. Hit it one time, kind of get locked in. Make sure we're flush right here too, and flush right here. See, I'm not perfect either. Still working on it.
I'll put mine.
Second nail right here. Boom. And then we'll get a second one in there.
My shit is, I put mine in the middle.
It's fine. Just you want to kind of always kind of put two in there. So, and also you want to go like one in the front, maybe one in the back. And also if you see that the wood is starting to break or something, one way to fix that and alleviate that so you don't do it again is, especially if you're dealing with like more lumber that's been used a lot of times, you want to take that nail, hit the top of it. And by doing that, it's less likely to crack the lumber. It makes a more flat surface. So you want to do that if you see your lumber cracking. Say if you have older lumber, maybe lumber that's been used for concrete before, that way helps so you don't split your lumber next time. Okay, so Editor Antonio, I'm back. I want to go a little more in depth when it comes to showing you how to make sure your whatever platform you're using is square. So this is a pretend wall, and this is going to be 16 foot. This is going to be the run. And this 10 foot is gonna be the rise. Now, this is what you're gonna type in your calculator. For the most part, you're not gonna go and do like some algebraic formula on your, on your own with paper. You can type it into your calculator, a little bit easier for you. And this is gonna be the diagonal right here. So what you'll do is, you'll type in your calculator. I don't know if you can see that right there. Okay, so you'll have a 16 foot run, and then you'll have a 10 foot rise, and then just hit the diagonal button right here, and then it'll tell you right there, that's 18, 10, and 7/16. And so that's the number that should be on both diagonals. So right here and then right here, that number is gonna be the same. And if it's the same, that means that your wall is square, it's good to go. If it's not, say one side is 18 and maybe it's like 18, 10 and 3/4, and this side would be a little bit shorter, right? Say it's like 18, 10 and like 1/4. That's not probably precise numbers, but again, I'm just trying to give you an example. What we have to do is you're gonna have to shift it to give this side more. So you'd probably have to put some stakes down on one side to kind of lock it in, and then you're gonna push it to this side over, if that makes sense. And so you'll probably hit it with the sledgehammer on this side, and then that'll make this number lessen and it'll push this side over and it'll make this one longer. That makes sense. So that's how you go about making sure you're in square before you try to start sheeting stuff, before you start locking stuff in. You want to make sure that this is all, both these numbers are the same, if that makes sense. Okay, so now we're gonna cut the plywood for to top this off right here. You want to make sure you're going 24, boom, mark that off, and then 24 here, mark that off. Now, making a crow's foot also is a lot better. I don't know if you can see that right here. Making a crow's foot is much better than just striking one line because it makes it a little more precision, a little more precise. And then what you want to do is just put your speed square and just mark that off a little bit so you can get more defined. So when you do put your chalk line on there, you can kind of have a little bit easier time in seeing where that goes. Boom, right there. So then, like I said, and this is why you always stay prepared, like with your chalk box, everything else, making sure you have everything you need. So a lot of times, if you don't have like all your material right there, all your things you need, now you might run down to the Connex, now you're running down to the job shack, when if you had everything prepared when you first started in the day, now you can just keep going, you just keep running, boom. See, so it's nice to have that extra line extending right here. You see that line, how it extends? It's kind of hard to see exactly where this box, where the chalk is gonna start right here. So it's nice to extend it, boom, make sure you're still lined up. You're lined up, then just snap, bang, just like that. That's good. So like I said before, it's important that you realize like what side you're cutting on. See, this piece of plywood it's 4 feet, but you have to account for the blades. When you cut this, both sides are not going to be equal anymore, right? Only one side's going to be 24 and one side's going to be like 23, maybe in 7/8, depending on like, you know, how much the blade does move or how much you cut off. But for the most part, your blade's gonna be about a 16th, maybe cut a little bit more off than that. So you have to account for that. So what you want to do is you want to cut on the other side of the line. So leave this to be 24 so you can be as precise as possible. Always practice on being precise when you can, because when you have to use those skills, you want to make sure you've been working on them. I know a lot of times when it comes to framing or concrete, it's a lot of like rough framing, it's a lot of doing things a little fast. So try to do things the best way you can while you have the opportunity. So again, you're gonna cut on this side of the line so you can leave this so it can be a full 24 inches. Okay, so before you cut this plywood, you wanna make sure you are setting the depth of your saw. It's just a good practice because so many times you're gonna be cutting maybe through multiple pieces of material, and you wanna make sure that you're only cutting the material and maybe a little bit more. I've had so many times where guys will cut over concrete, they'll leave indentions in the sidewalks, or they'll cut onto fresh material because they didn't set their saw properly. So if we set your saw, you want to make sure that you are coming right here and making sure you're only cutting the material. So before you do that, as an apprentice, if you haven't used saws before, protect yourself. Take one battery out, because you don't want to accidentally, you know, pulling the guard back and dealing with a saw and accidentally cut your finger off. You know what I'm saying? So take out a battery so there's no chance of it ever coming on. Boom, got that. Pull the saw guard back, and then what you want to do is pull this lever right here. And now this is loosened, right? This is now loosened. Boom, we can move now. Take this right here, and then you want to see where the saw is barely cutting through the plywood material now. It's just barely cutting through. You lock that in right there. Now that's setting your saw to the proper depth, should I say, the proper depth, so that you're not cutting more material than you need. So that way you can put a 2x right under your cut, so when you go forward, and you are going to be cutting this material right here, you're not going to have it bind up at the end. So that's why you set your depth, so that not only can you cut through material down here and not really damage it too much, but also you're not going to be damaging material. Say if you have a stack of lumber on top of each other, like a unit of plywood, and you're just ripping. Setting your depth is going to save other pieces. A lot of times as carpenters and journeymen, usually you do all the cutting because you have the expertise, but I think sometimes it's important that you let your apprentices get some action. So the one thing you do first and foremost, is make sure you have something that's going to keep this up when you cut. So whether it be like a 2-binder here or the material, because if you don't have material inside of here, once you get at that end, it's going to bind up and it's going to want to bend on itself, and it's going to make a really nasty cut at the end. So that's why I have a 2-binder here, so that when I'm in cutting, I'm barely touching it, because the depth of the saw is proper, but also it's going to be able to have a smooth cut. So what I do first is I'm going to make the initial cut for him, and then I'm letting him cut way through. You do is you see that line, you start it off, you cut a little bit, then you measure. Because if you cut all the way through and the dimensions are wrong, now you're screwed. But at least this way, if it's a little bit off, you can still fix it. So we're gonna look, boom, 24 inches on there, boom, it's money, 24 inches still. So now I'm gonna let him cut the rest of this. We have our speed square again as our guide. He'll put it back in that little notch right there and then just fall all the way through. And if you have a hard time and you feel like you can't, you're kind of in no man's land right here, you can use a straight edge, but because it's so small, we're not gonna set that up right now. If you need to at the back end, set your speed square back here to catch it, just to make sure at the end, to make sure that cut is nice, but overall, we're gonna see how he does. Up to you, bro, let's see how you do.
Let's get it. All right, so when I'm setting this up, what I'm looking at is trying to not only get back into his cut, but also I'm looking to see if I can set this up right in this notch and follow that line all the way through.
So you set that speed square right there to make sure you're still following that path all the way up. Money. And see, as you can see,
it got a little wonky at the end, so I kind of lost track of where my blade was at this end right here. So you kind of see.
Well, also let's double check first before we making excuses about why this cut wasn't straight or not.
You feel me?
Let's check. Okay, boom. It's a little bit fat, so let's see. It's like a 24 and like an eighth, but right here it's still about 24. So what happened is, as he got past this security blanket with the speed square.
Editor Antonio back one last time. I want to go over something. Part of the video got corrupted, so I decided to do on the whiteboard instead. And this is actually kind of better because I can give you a little more in-depth and show you exactly what I'm doing. So when Wuda made his first cut, initially it was right on target, right? Because it was 12 inches because he started cutting from this way, this direction, right? And then he lost himself towards the back because the chalk line kind of moved and then he didn't have the speed square, so it got a little bit bigger. So here's the example. If you start off at 12 inches right here and that's gospel, this is good, this is perfect, right? And then this side, it got a little bit bigger. See how it's at a square? It doesn't look square. Now this is 5/8 big. What you do is you're gonna measure, boom, and then you're gonna find where your 12 inches at. Make sure you're square. Find your 12 inches. Then you either get a straight edge or chalk box, whatever method you want to use, and then you'll go to 0 right here. So this is perfect. So it's 0. You don't have to do anything over here. Then you'll come back and then you'll get that 5/8. You'll strike it back like this. So you'll cut this part off, and then this part will make it a perfect 12 by 12 square, or whatever number you're having. So that's a quick fix if you have, one side being oblong like that, or running a little bit long. That's how you're gonna fix that problem. Pretty simple.
So we're gonna nail this piece of plywood on there, but before we do that, let's double check and make sure everything's the same. We have 24 right here, which is good. 24 right here. Now this is all factory. Remember, this came straight from Home Depot. This is actually gonna be 20, it looks like 24 and 3/16. 24 and 3/16. So that's always why it's good to double check first, so that you aren't going to have to, whether it be like cheat yourself, like, try to cheat that 3/16 on here. It's much better just to do it the right way the first time. And that's why we always double check our measurements before we fasten this down. So go 24 right here. Now one thing you can do is just strike this right here. You'll go 24 inches. Mark with your pencil like this, and then just pull this down. Boom. You just cut this little chunk right here, this little piece right here off. Pretty simple. And you're cutting on the right side of the line. Boom. And there you have it. Boom. So now it's going to fit on there a lot better than before. Now you don't have to fight that. So you have flush right here, your flush right here, you're flush right here. Now you can finally fasten it on.
So after I made sure that the plywood was flush with the 2x framing, then I just put some fasteners in it, just some simple 8 sinkers, nothing too crazy, just 4 on each side. So about 16 nails altogether, which isn't too much, especially sometimes if you have like plywood that is framing for like outside of a building. You might have a detail, it's like every 6 inches or every, 1 foot on center. This kind of depends on whatever the architect or engineer calls out. So that's what you're gonna do. But this is kind of an example without wasting too many materials.
So as you can see right here, the project is all finished and I think it looks pretty good. This might be something typically you might do if you have a roof hatch access, something we have to, build a little topper for that, or just like add into the framing. It's not important as far as like the project itself, what you're doing. It's just that you're doing it properly, getting those reps in, measuring twice before you cut, just kind of getting a good idea before you start, you know what I'm saying? So that you're not shooting yourself in the foot as far as like not having enough fasteners, not having the battery set up. All these things come into play when it comes to being proficient and being effective in carpentry. So that's why I had somebody who was brand new, someone who hadn't done this before, so that I can kind of show him the ropes a little bit, the same way I'll show an apprentice. A lot of times as a journeyman, you're gonna lead a lot of times, you're gonna be doing things. So as an apprentice, your job is just watch and kind of soak in the information, and the journeyman should be handing you off the reins a lot of times so you can give you some reps so that when you are, higher in your apprenticeship, maybe 3rd or 4th or 5th term, you are getting those reps in too. But it's important that, you work together, and you also, as journeyman, being patient with your apprentices, because again, you don't know what you haven't been taught before. So a lot of this is about getting reps, and hopefully I gave you some little bit of jewels in this video. If you guys liked it, please hit that like button. And if you guys have any comments, any questions you guys want to give to me or post to me, let me know in the comment section. I appreciate you guys. Peace.